All right, let's talk about something big that just landed on January 22nd. EASA issued a new proposed airworthiness directive, 26-009. And look, if you're operating the Airbus A350-941, this is something you absolutely need to know about. So we're going to break down exactly what this means for your fleet. So, in this explainer, we're going to cut right through all the technical jargon and give you a really clear breakdown of the directive's key requirements. And just so you know, everything we're about to cover comes straight from that official EASA source document. No speculation, just the facts you need. Okay, so we've broken this down into 5 key parts. First, we'll dig into the why, the unsafe condition EASA is pointing to. Then we'll look at who this applies to, the specific actions you've got to take, the impact on safety, and then we'll wrap it all up with a summary for the management folks. So, let's get started. First up, let's really understand the problem.
All right, first up, the unsafe condition. Look, before we can even get into what needs to be done, we've got to understand the why. What's the root cause that EASA has zeroed in on here?
You know, the whole issue starts with a pretty fascinating but also pretty dangerous interaction. This was actually discovered during a routine maintenance inspection, and it all boils down to a really specific question. What happens when certain runway surfaces create these intense, high-frequency vibrations in the landing gear? Now, this is where it gets really interesting, because this slide breaks down the whole chain reaction. It all starts with these high-frequency oscillations that come from particular runway surfaces. This creates some serious frictional heating right in the main landing gear's bogie pivot joint. Now, that heat starts to damage a special protective layer. It's called the HVOF coating. And once that coating is compromised, well, the heat can cause thermal damage and even start cracking the underlying base material of the pivot pin. And all of that, it leads to the final critical danger, the potential for the entire main landing gear to just collapse. And just so we're absolutely crystal clear on how serious this is, here's the direct wording from EASA itself. The potential outcome? Main landing gear collapse, which, could result in damage to the aircraft and, most critically, injury to the people inside. So the main takeaway here is this is a risk that has to be actively managed, period.
Okay, so that's the risk. And that leads us straight into our next section, applicability and scope. We need to know exactly which aircraft and parts we're talking about here. And the scope here is, well, it's about as clear and comprehensive as it gets. This directive applies to all Airbus A350-941 aeroplanes. I mean, every single one of them. It doesn't matter what its manufacturer serial number is. This is a fleet-wide directive, plain and simple. Okay, now, before we dive into the actions you need to take, we have to clarify a really key term from the directive, serviceable part. What does that mean? Well, it's pretty simple. It means either a brand new part, a used part that's passed its inspection with flying colors, or a part that's been properly repaired according to the book. Just keep that definition in your back pocket, because it is absolutely central to everything that comes next. All right, now for the real core of this briefing, the required technical actions. This is the what you have to do part. This is exactly what operators, their camos, and their maintenance teams are now mandated to do. This table really lays it all out perfectly. The main requirement is a repetitive, detailed inspection of the main landing gear bogie pivot pin and its bushes. That first check, it's got to be done before the aircraft hits 70,100 flight hours or 13,700 flight cycles, whichever one comes up first. And after that, you've got to repeat that inspection at the same intervals. But here is the most critical part. If you find any discrepancy, the affected parts on that landing gear must be replaced with serviceable parts before the next flight. Let me say that again. Before the next flight. That is an immediate no-fly condition, no exception. So where do you find the step-by-step instructions for these inspections and replacements? Well, they're not actually in the AD itself. They're contained in these 2 key documents, the Airbus Inspection Service Bulletin and the Safran Landing Systems Vendor Service Bulletin. These are the absolute go-to sources for your technical teams. Okay, so how do all these actions directly fix the unsafe condition we talked about at the beginning? This next part really connects the dots between the required work and how it boosts safety and quality. I love this slide because it puts it in such stark contrast. On one side, you've got the unmitigated risk, a potential catastrophic failure of the landing gear. I mean, that's the worst case scenario.
But on the other side, you have the mitigation that this AD provides. See, these repetitive inspections are specifically designed to catch any damage to that coating or the base material at a really early stage, way before it can lead to failure. It's a proactive approach that ensures parts get replaced when they need to be, which is how you maintain the continued airworthiness of the aircraft. All right, let's switch gears a little and look at this from the operational and business side of things. This is the high-level summary that planners, managers, and executives really need to see. This dashboard really sums it up nicely. First, the affected fleet, all A350-941s. The initial compliance deadline is firm, before 71,100 flight hours or 13,700 flight cycles. The downtime risk? It's high. You have to remember, if a discrepancy is found, that plane is grounded until it's fixed. And maybe the most important consideration, this is not a one-and-done fix. The repetitive nature of these checks requires some serious long-term maintenance planning and coordination. Okay, so let's pull all of this together and map out the immediate next steps and key obligations for everyone who's affected. All right, here are your marching orders, nice and simple. Who's affected? All A350-941 operators. What do you have to do? Perform those repetitive detailed inspections of the MLG pivot pins and bushes. When does it need to be done? Before you hit those flight hour and cycle limits. And the big action item right now, get everyone on the same page. You need full coordination between your camo, planning, maintenance, and commercial teams to make sure this gets done on time and done right. And one last, and I mean vital, reminder. While this briefing gives you a clear summary, it is absolutely not a substitute for the official documentation. For the complete, legally binding instructions, your teams must always refer to the official EASA AD text and those related service bulletins from Airbus and Southron. That's non-negotiable. Subscribe to Aeropada YouTube channel.